first day of school, and everyone knew that like a famous actor decided to transfer to your school during the off season, during the summer, and no one's met him yet, but you're like hoping to see him, and then he shows up and it's like,
oh my God, he's in my math class.
oh my gosh, DeMar DeRozan is here. I think the overwhelming feeling of everything, take all the basketball out, take everything else out.
Yeah.
That you got a star, a player that most of these guys grew up watching because he's been in the league for so long. Even De'Aaron Fox, like he's entering year 8, and what is DeRozan's year 16?
Ooh.
So De'Aaron started talking about it. He's like, what was I like in 6th grade when he got drafted?
That's crazy.
He's like, so it's really, really interesting to watch him come into the league. And it's like, you know him, but you don't know him. And now he's your teammate, and that's different. And I think one of the prevailing things, I asked Trey Lyles about this, but DeMar talked about how he's a quiet leader, right? Like he leads by example. And I asked Trey because he started talking about leadership, and I think most people forgot that Trey Lyles played with DeMar DeRozan in San Antonio for 2 years. Completely.
I didn't forget that. Didn't know it.
Completely missed it. Completely missed it, right? And then I asked Trey, I'm like, is it kind of funny? You guys seem to collect quiet leaders. Like it's a whole team of quiet leaders. And then Malik Monk.
Yeah.
Everyone else is like super reserved, super like calm. Like they let their actions speak for themselves. Yeah. And then Malik Monk is out there like with a giant drum. So I think that was my biggest takeaway, is that how everyone is enamored with the fact that DeMar DeRozan is in the building.
Yeah, that's gonna, and I that's not gonna change anytime soon.
No,
like that's gonna be the vibe night 1 at Golden One Center too.
Oh no, totally.
And probably night 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Just as long as DeMar DeRozan's suiting up for the Kings, there's gonna be like, here's how this is. I may be alone in this, but I don't think I am. It was the same vibe with Vince Carter, and granted, way different spots in their career, which is kind of the point I'm getting to. But even Vince Carter, who was here at what age, 40?
38,
39. Right. Just, and well past his prime.
Yeah.
He was a jump shooting savvy veteran at that point. Right. But it still was like, oh my God, Vince Carter is like here. He is just around. He is going to be here again tomorrow night. And that's a little bit how it is with DeMar DeRozan. But then you have to factor in, oh, hey, he's also a game-changing offensive player for everything the Kings have been doing the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's adding that in. That's really, really exciting. And I'm glad that bled over into media day.
Yeah, I think, like I've talked about this, my first season, like for whatever reason, I wasn't really starstruck. I walked in the door and I'm like, okay, whatever. This is what it is. I'm here to do a job and all that stuff.
Yes.
And then I was standing out on the court talking to some of my new media friends at that point. I think Jason Ross and Sean Cunningham. And Dominique Wilkins walked over and like, hey,
talk to Jason Ross, by the way. Don't talk to him. Go ahead.
Dominique walks over and like, hey, what's going on, guys? And he like joins our scrum. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Dominique.
It's hi, Dominique.
Hi, Dominique.
Hi. Oh my God, huge fan.
Do I call you Dominique or Mr. Wilkins or do I call you Mr. Highlight Reel? That's what, when Vince Carter walked in the door, it felt like with a lot of the media members. Vince Carter would hold like fireside chats at his locker and would just wax.
Shout out FDR.
Yeah, just wax poetically for like 15 minutes after a game, and everyone's huddled around and it's like, man, I got a job to do. I'm not going to sit here. Like, it's cool to hear the stories and stuff, but eventually you're like, okay, this is like, you guys are I don't know what you're doing with all this footage of Vince Carter interviews in the locker room, but there's too much of it. This is going to be different. Like DeMar DeRozan is a flat out baller. He's coming here to score 20 points per game and to win basketball games. And that's not to say that Vince Carter wasn't here to win basketball games, but this is a different type of player. And I think the buzz around him is pretty wild. It's the biggest buzz around any player that I've ever seen in Sacramento since I've covered the team.
Like what would even be close?
Vince Carter. No, I mean that's Zebo.
Like obviously, people because Domas came mid-season, and then going into that, everybody knew Domantas Sabonis was good, but he hadn't kind of reached hadn't ascended to the heights that he's at now. De'Aaron Fox is an exciting rookie, but there's exciting rookies all the time. Like this is just kind of unprecedented in the last 2 decades.
I think a player like Domantas Sabonis too. You look at the numbers, but he's playing in Indiana. He's playing in OKC.
Yeah, and he just hasn't been around as long.
No, but you don't get the appreciation for Domantas Sabonis until you watch him every single game, and you realize that dude just brings his lunch pail and his hard hat and takes a beating and gives a beating to other people.
Yeah,
and that's you develop an appreciation.
Sure.
DeMar DeRozan, we've been able to watch from afar and go, oh my gosh, he's a great basketball player.
Yeah,
6-time All-Star, surefire Hall of Famer, all that stuff.
I saw some photos of Keegan Murray. Best shape of his life, Keegan Murray?
Yeah, I'm gonna
Might
say
be.
yeah. Keegan, to me, like, we always look for the star of the day, right? The guy who was a workout warrior and all that stuff. And I think that, like, overall, that was a general theme. Like Orlando Robinson walked up and I was like, oh my gosh, you are a huge dude. Like, I think I even said to him, I guess because he had to reach around the crowd to like get to where he was trying to go to. And I'm like, I guess that's what a 7'4" wingspan looks like. And he goes, yep. And he is a tremendously like built dude. And but Keegan Murray steps up. And like I asked him about, like, it looks like you bulked up, and he said, "Yeah, I've got to be ready to defend bigger players this year."
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, okay. It's like, yeah, there's no more HB. I've got to, whoever it is,
yeah,
LeBron
spend some
or
time at the 4 or whatever,
KD or well, he's gonna spend a lot of time at the 4. It's like I got to be ready, and it's like, wow. So I would say I'm not saying he gained 20 pounds, but upper body strength.
Yeah.
He's gonna fight the balancing, adding bulk and still remaining, super flexible. But he was probably one of the more impressive, like, body transformation guys.
Yeah.
And I expect that from him another couple of times because they're gonna keep twisting.
He's an older prospect, but he's not an old person. Right? He came into the league a little later than an 18-year-old, but his body's still gonna change pretty dramatically. Like you said, probably 1 or 2 more times.
Well, that, and the interesting thing about him is, like, I had someone within the walls of the Kings tell me when after they drafted him that the Kings looked at both the Murray twins and looked at how late they grew and said that they have young bodies that can be transformed. Like, they're not like your seasoned veteran body that's coming in at 22 years old. That they thought that there was a lot of moldability to just their physiques. And that's what we're seeing. And they've been able to, like, really transform him at every step of the way here. And we're looking at his 3rd NBA summer, and like the body transformation is just wild. I want to see how it looks on the court because that's usually where it's like, okay, maybe you need to tone it back. I mean, De'Aaron Fox did this one time when he was young. It was like, okay, man, that you looking like an NFL linebacker is probably not what we're looking for.
Yeah, it's a fluctuation for sure. One of the people that D'Lo was talking about yesterday before KC pulled up, they were showing video of Kevin Huerter. And I know we're going to talk about Kevin Huerter a lot. We're going to talk about the shooting guard spot a lot. I felt like last year, really starting in the preseason, from the moment Chris Duarte was supposed to start a preseason game, it felt like that began a spiral that Kevin Huerter never fully pulled out of. And I think that in my opinion, again, I'm not a psychologist, I don't know the guy, but it felt like that kind of affected his play on the court. Do you feel like he's in a better space this year, a different space? Or were you able to glean that from yesterday?
Yeah, I would say, like, you have to even rewind a little bit. The 3-point shootout is where I think Kevin got in his head when he just melted down in 3-point at the All-Star weekend.
Yeah.
And then he had a bad playoff, right? And he wasn't impactful in the playoffs. And then you got into training camp, and he was, again, in a battle that he didn't see coming. And that was a problem. I think that, first of all, like, Kevin isn't 100% cleared,
Mhm.
and he's taking the advice of his doctor. He's doing all of the work that he needs to do. He's not fully 6 months. I think he said is something like October 4th or something. He said the date.
So this week.
Yeah. But then once he's cleared, he's got to be cleared again, and then he's got to be cleared for contact.
My God.
And so, like, once he has the doctor visit, the doctor says, yeah, we're thumbs up. Then you go to the rest of what's going to happen. He's been working out. I thought it was really interesting. Him and Devin Carter have been kind of in the gym at the same time, doing the same types of rehab. And Kevin said that Devin Carter had gone through it before, which at first we thought that meant that Devin Carter had surgery. Like, sounded like Kevin Herter said that Devin Carter had surgery while in college on his shoulder, but that's not what he said. Well, that's not. Devin Carter did not confirm that. He said, no, I've never had surgery up until this point. But he had gone through the rehab process before
that makes sense.
Of trying to repair his shoulder.
Yeah.
And
trying to do it without surgery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So all the bands and all that stuff, they've been working together. I thought Kevin was in good spirits. I thought he had a good, like a smile. He looked like he had been working really hard on his body, and that he's ready to play. He also said, he thinks this year will be a lot more catch and shoot opportunities as opposed to the flying off the DHO.
Mm-hmm.
And like he just felt like more like the guy that we saw in year one, like most of the season, where he was just really, really good.
Yeah.
And, really strong player, and then kind of lost his way. So I was happy to see him at least mentally see like he's himself, and he talked about it. He feels refreshed. He's really worked on it. And so hopefully that plays out and is a good thing for him during the season.
That's James Ham. I'm Kyle Madsen. Jiffy Lube sponsors the show. We're the Insiders. We're hanging out with you until noon right here on Sacramento Sports Leader, ESPN 1320. I want to put a pin in Media Day stuff. I want to ask you about a few more people who were there, and I want to get into some training camp questions because the Kings begin training camp today.
Yeah,
at noon. But we got a ton of stuff to pack in, so I want to put a pin in the Kings stuff momentarily, and get to whatever the hell happened on Monday Night Football last night. Remember last week when we said that we were out on the 2 Monday Night Football games?
Oh yeah,
we're kind of like yesterday. I was so grateful for it. If I had to sit through Titans Dolphins on Monday Night Football, I wouldn't have made it. I don't know what I would have done.
You that just would have not watched football.
Somehow, that's legitimate. It might have been on, but that's like a phone game or I'm going to follow this on the NFL app game. It was so bad. I didn't think it could get worse than the Dolphins-Seahawks game, and it might have gotten worse.
I looked at that game and knew that it was going to be so horrible that there was no way I could turn it on.
So that was what I said to Jesse yesterday.
Yeah.
And Jesse started trying to talk me into it, because of it. And I was like, okay, you know what? Tyler Huntley, talented player. Mike McDaniel's had him for a couple of weeks. Maybe they do something fun and it's going to look different, and they can kind of make this a game just through some kind of offensive smoke and mirrors. Nope. Was never a game. Was never fun. I enjoyed 0 seconds of whatever I watched of that game. But thankfully, on the other channel, we had Lions Seahawks. The Lions win that game 42-29. Jared Goff, 18 of 18. 292 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also caught a touchdown pass.
Absolutely spectacular.
Unreal game.
Yes.
Just an outstanding performance from Jared Goff and the entire Lions offense. Young 42 on a Seattle defense that'll look pretty good. That's impressive. But honestly, I went into last night thinking, okay, the Seahawks win this game, I'm in on the Seahawks. If they lose, then it'll tell me. But honestly, I think the Seahawks are still very much for real despite their loss last night. I don't want to say blown away. They didn't play that well, but going into Detroit and sticking around as much as they did in that game where there were so many opportunities for them. They were down 2 touchdowns and they're down 16. Okay. They cut it to 8. Oh, immediately 70-yard touchdown. That makes it a 15-point game again. But then, hey, they're battling back. I was really impressed by Seattle last night. They're 3-1 after 4 weeks, and I think that's a very real 3-1. I think Seattle's good.
I think we were waiting to see if they were a real 3-1, And I think what we saw last night was, yeah, they're legit.
Yeah.
And not only that, but I would say that the Lions are legit contenders.
They're good, man.
Yeah, that run by Montgomery, or was it a reception and then run?
Well, there was it was a reception where he railroaded Devon Witherspoon.
Yeah.
Immediately, and then broke another tackle, and then reversed field,
and then broke like 6 more tackles.
That was remarkable. And he seems to do that once a game, where he has a run where you just kind of like, wait, gotta rewind. Did he really just do that? Did I see that right?
That is the mentality of the Detroit Lions.
Yes.
And that's what I think. It's very rare that you see a mentality permeate through an entire organization like it is with the Lions, where there's so much fight from every single player who steps on the field. And it really is like their coach has set the standard of who they're going to be. And like I've mentioned this before, it really does remind me of like the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah.
Like who they are going to be. Taylor Jenkins like runs that team. Like, this is who we are. And they lost their way last year for sure. And I don't know how they get back on their, because once you lose that, I don't know if you can regain that as like the spirit of who you are.
Totally.
But for right now, like, he has their ear, and the collective whole is, I mean, they're incredible as a group. And I think they're going to be really tough to beat.
Yeah. All the Dan Campbell stuff felt like bluster at first, right?
Yeah.
It felt like, okay, biting kneecaps. Okay, you weirdo. But man, that energy, like you said, they have fully adopted that personality. I have questions about whether they can get enough stops defensively.
Yeah.
In a big game, but it might not matter, because apparently they can just score whenever they want to. And I really think that what you saw last night, the Lions had been kind of up and down the first couple of weeks. Had that really close game against a beat up Rams team, and then they lose at home to Tampa Bay, and then they go in and they beat the Cardinals 20-13. Yesterday felt like, okay, everything kind of clicked for the Lions. This is who the Lions are going to be. And from the 49ers perspective, okay, Seahawks are legit. I think the Seahawks are good. And they're now a game up in the division. And Detroit is not going anywhere. Detroit is like you said, a bona fide contender in the NFC. That was kind of the big takeaway for me last night, is these two teams clearly, okay, they have found their stride. The Seahawks, were 3-0 going into last night. They've hit a stride early. The Lions really locked in last night. Okay, you figure that's kind of what they're going to be moving forward. Now the Niners need to do the same. And was week 4 a fluke where, hey, yeah, they played a really bad team and they looked awesome doing it? Or are we seeing the Niners kind of turn it up the way we saw Seattle do at the start of the year and the way we saw the Lions do last night?
Yeah.
I'm waiting to see, because they can't. It's really clear they're not going to be able to do the thing where they go, yeah, hey, we're 3-5 after 8 weeks, but hey, everything's going to be cool. Just rip off 7 straight wins and make the playoffs. I don't think I don't think that's going to work this year.
Maybe.
There's too many good teams.
I think there are a lot of good teams, though. I definitely think. But
we didn't even mention Minnesota.
There's also a bunch
the best team in the sport right now.
There's also a bunch of bad teams. Let's be honest. I mean, we saw bad teams play last night, and you're going to get a couple of those on your schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah. Minnesota's quietly just the best team in the NFL.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's any reason to think that's going anywhere. But man, that Titans-Dolphins game was so ugly. I thought maybe I'd get some enjoyment out of like, yeah, hey, Will Levis, oh, look how bad he is. But then he gets hurt. Mason Rudolph comes in. I have no interest in watching Mason Rudolph play football.
No.
That was brutal. Thank God for the 2 Monday Night Football games. Also last night or yesterday, you want to talk about Pete Rose real quick?
Yeah, let's talk about Pete Rose.
So
it's complicated, right?
Pete Rose, I need to make this, I don't want to have this be the conversation, but this is just how I want to make sure that I am expressing this. The all-time leader in hits in Major League Baseball. Baseball exists, professional baseball exists outside of Major League Baseball.
It does.
I just need that. Ichiro's the all-time leader in hits. Pete Rose has more hits in Major League Baseball history than anybody ever. Obviously not in the Hall of Fame because of the gambling stuff. I still contend that it wasn't the gambling that kept Pete Rose out of the Hall of Fame. It was how he acted about it afterwards and denying it for so long. And then continuing to make gambling like a prominent part of his life. And some off-field things that came out about him. I just think all of those things kind of stacked up. Like it felt like the league was kind of trending toward, or there was going to be like a groundswell of support to get Pete Rose as he entered, his late 70s and early 80s. There was going to be this groundswell of support to get him to Cooperstown. Hey, you know what? You're in bed with all these betting sites and all these sports books anyways. You're watching a game and they're telling you what the run line is at the bottom of the 5th inning. Like, man, just put him in Cooperstown. But I think that he was a divisive enough figure for a long enough time that the league was just never gonna let that happen.
Yeah, I'd also say that the fact that A. Bartlett Giamatti, the commissioner at the time who banned Pete Rose, ended up dying like 7 days later, I think that played into it as well. Like it sort of, for a lot of people, it cemented that decision was finalized.
Mm-hmm.
And let's be honest here, like there are other great players that are not in the Hall of Fame because of this exact situation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not even this exact situation. Pete Rose was way more like out there in front of it and making money on this and trying, like Shoeless Joe Jackson is not in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame because not only was he a degenerate gambler, but he bet on his own teams while he was a manager and a player.
Crazy.
Like the stuff that he did is just like, you can't accept that. And I know a lot of people look at this and say, like, they're like, your sports figures, they have so many faults. Like, how are you going to pick and choose what's a fault and what it's not? And I know a lot of people are going to have the same conversation, not about gambling, but about cheating, because that's what taking PEDs is. It's cheating. But they have the same conversation, whether it's about Barry Bonds or whether it's about A-Rod or whether it's about McGuire. There's all these players that, they're not in the Hall of Fame because they cheated. And I think Rose is the one that, like in our era, there's got to be other players that bet on baseball. There's no,
for sure.
A tough, like, how many players, we don't know. But at the end of the day, his inability to really like accept responsibility for it and not just be he was like a red ass on the field.
Yeah.
And that's who he was as a person.
Yeah.
And that's really, really grating. And when he got it in his head that he was going to fight this battle, that he did no wrong, and that whatever happened, it's, people should look past it, or they should, and also just to deny it forever. That's just like, at the end of the day, it's, he doesn't deserve to be in the Hall because he cheated.
Yeah.
And because he defiled the sport. I mean,
and baseball as a sport, when it we're going back to the 1800s now, when it first became like an organized sport, they used to have bookies like on the field taking bets on, like, that was the whole thing around baseball. And that's why when it became a legitimate professional league and it started to grow the way it did into the early 1900s, that's why they had to eliminate that and completely separate themselves from it, because they wanted to legitimize themselves as a league, whether it was the Federal League or the American League or the National League or whatever it was. They needed to legitimize themselves by separating themselves from gamblers entirely. And that was why the punishment with the White Sox in the 1919 World Series was so severe, even though several of those players never saw a dime. And a guy like Shoeless Joe Jackson, there was never any evidence that he did anything to throw a game, but he's just being involved in that conspiracy. Like that was enough. Like, you're gone. And just that precedent was set so early in the sport that you can't do what Pete Rose did. And you might say, like, yeah, times change and they're in bed with sports books now. And the segment about Pete Rose dying is sponsored by DraftKings, kind of thing. Like, that's where the discussion's gone. But it's like, baseball as a sport is just, or MLB as a league is just never going to accept it.
Yeah.
It will never, ever be a thing that they're okay with.
It's funny. They're okay with certain things and they're not with others.
Yeah.
I mean, because
they decided gambling is the hard red line.
Yeah. And A-Rod, a multi-time cheater, is one of the faces of their programming. And you just stand about, like, I don't know what to say.
So, Pete Rose, no longer with us. Major League Baseball's hit king. Should probably be in Cooperstown, but is not. All right. We got more King stuff to get to. We got training camp questions. I got a couple of more things for you from Media Day. We'll have some more 49er stuff coming up. Tons to get into in the next hour and a half on The Insider, sponsored by Jiffy Lube. He's James. I'm Kyle. We're on ESPN 1320, Sacramento Sports Leader. We're clear.
Clear. P-Rose played forever.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to bring this up from earlier. I keep bringing this up, the 3-point being a downfall of Kevin's, and it's not true. We've mentioned plenty of times. The 3-point shootout took a huge mental toll on Kevin Huerter. I can tell you that for a fact. Like, I was in the locker room with him, like his response to what happened there. And as soon as the shots stopped falling, they stopped falling completely. And it was like, again, you can believe that the 3-point shootout had nothing to do with anything, but once his 3-point shot stopped falling at a certain point, it got in his head. And you can look at his playoffs, and his playoff shooting was, basically he was half the player that he normally was. He shot 20.5% in the 7-game series from 3. Averaged 9 points a game after averaging 15 for the season. So. And last season, Kevin kept getting a hitch, and it was a weird thing to watch because he's such a great shooter. But you could see it, and then you could see it get under his skin because he knew he was doing it. And you could watch him in warm-ups, and it was like, uh-oh, what's happening here? And I feel for him. He's a guy that, he's known as a shooter, and when that's your thing and then it doesn't work, that becomes a bigger problem. No, special ed. Yeah, the Kings this year are not going to depend on Kevin Huerter nearly as much, but they're still going to depend on Huerter. I mean, we can't, when you have DeMar DeRozan and you have Domantas Sabonis in your starting lineup, you need 3-point shooters, as many as you can get, just to keep the spacing. And so, especially when you lose a guy, oh boy, bad things are happening in the world as we're sitting here. Yeah, we'll have to see how Huerter responds.
Computer charger real quick?
Yeah.
I saw Damian doing this yesterday, and I'm wondering if this works.
I tried. I've tried that. It might work.
Oh hell yeah! We have literally never been more back.
I'm gonna bring in a No, now it got stuck. Yeah, I'm gonna bring in a Fire Stick. I'll work on that.
Oh, hang on, I'm doing it one more time.
Oh, I was saying with the Harrison Barnes being gone, averaged 38 point whatever, shot 38% from 3. The Kings need shooters. That was an interesting discussion too, just how having Harrison Barnes not there, such a foreign thing. I mean, for 5.5 years he was with the Kings, and
Now, back to the Insiders with James Ham and Kyle Madsen, brought to you by Jiffy Lube on ESPN 1320.
916-909-1320, 916-909-1320. That is the Elk Grove Kia talk line if you want to join the program, 916-909-1320. I'll get back into the Sacramento Kings here, and want to remind you, by the way, that the Insiders, our podcast, is available wherever you get your podcasts. It's called the James Ham and Kyle Madsen Show.
Oh, yeah.
You search that, subscribe, and you can catch whatever you miss live. Maybe you want to revisit something. Maybe you just want to help us cook our downloads. However you want to justify it, please go download the James Ham and Kyle Madsen Show and subscribe.
There you go.
Wherever you get your pods. And, of course, on the free Odyssey app. Kings. We didn't print our rundowns. Well, we printed our rundowns.
I didn't go get them. I forgot.
Brutal.
It's my bad.
Okay, so we were talking about Kings Media Day, and we talked about DeMar DeRozan, Kevin Huerter, and Keegan Murray. But for me this year, and frankly for the foreseeable future, I think the Kings are going to kind of go as far as De'Aaron Fox takes them.
Mm-hmm.
That's not to say that he's doing this alone, but I believe in the NBA, you are going to go as far as your number one player takes you. And to me, De'Aaron Fox is the 1A on this team. If you disagree with that, that's fine. We can have that discussion. But where is he at? Because this is a pretty sizable change. You were talking at the break. Harrison Barnes no longer with the Kings. Okay, they're bringing in DeMar DeRozan, who is a bona fide Hall of Fame shot maker. Where's De'Aaron Fox with all this? At least in your read on being a media day yesterday.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, there are certain players that like to get media day and the media portion, like talking to the media, like out of the way as quickly as possible, because media day is like, it's a bit of a misnomer. Like media day means they have to hit like 42 stations, including like Kings.com has if everyone remembers Mike Brown screaming. That was because the Kings had Rashawn Holmes on the other side of the gym roaring like a lion, and Mike heard it and responded back. So that's because there was a station, and NBC has a station where they do like all those slow-mo promos where you're going to halftime and you see like the camera spinning around De'Aaron Fox and he's holding the ball. They have to go in all these stations. They have to go in all the photo booths, all that stuff. De'Aaron Fox is a player who likes to drag it out as long as possible. He does not. He wants to be last. He wants to be the last one to talk to media. And it's funny because Domantas Sabonis is a guy that wants to talk to the media first and get everything done with, and then go do all of his other duties. So I thought for me, by the time De'Aaron got to us, he was just in a great mood. He had a big smile on his face. It's funny. This is his 8th media day in Sacramento. And for someone who's covered all of those, really, really intriguing to watch a kid come in at 19 years old, brash with like little spiky hair, and like he weighs like maybe 160 pounds soaking wet. And now he's a full grown man. He's married. He's got kids, and watch the whole transformation of him as like a teenager to a grown man and the leader of a basketball team. And he's comfortable. He's excited about his shoes. He was overwhelmed by his trip to China. Everything about him just like exuded confidence. And not that I think De'Aaron Fox arrived a few years ago, but the comfortability in your own skin is something that I think he now can take ownership of. And I think he's really excited to work with somebody like, I mean, he was over the moon excited to work with Domas, but to work with another guy like him in DeMar DeRozan, it's something he brought up. He said that both of us draw the same types of coverage. It's always the long, super athletic wing that teams stick on us. So you play the Timberwolves, and all of a sudden you're up against McDaniel brother all game long, right? And he's like, now there's 2 of us. So what are you gonna do now? And I think he's really looking forward to what DeRozan brings to the court and how he can take some of the pressure off. And I look at DeRozan in that way, the same way I look at Keon Ellis playing next to De'Aaron as a guy who can take a lot of the pressure off defensively. If you can slowly take little things away from De'Aaron Fox and let him thrive in the things that he's comfortable doing and what he's good at, you're going to find that De'Aaron Fox could take a gigantic leap as a player.
Yeah.
And whether it's just like becoming more efficient or it's just becoming more consistent or whatever it is, I just think we'll see something slightly different from him this year.
Yeah.
Where you see the glide of De'Aaron Fox when he's playing at his height, he barely touches the floor.
Yeah.
He's like watching a video game.
Mm-hmm.
And when he's perfect health wise and he's right on the court, that's when you just get optimal. And I think we might see a lot more optimal De'Aaron Fox this season.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about Keegan Murray taking a leap and that being such a key. But if you're getting that version of De'Aaron Fox where he just, not that he hasn't, like, he's been an all NBA caliber player for the last 2 years, but making a leap into a like MVP echelon, right?
Yeah.
Where, okay, it's everything he's been good at, but now he has mastered this. Where it's, getting to his spot and connecting whenever he wants and knowing, like, he had the game last year where he hadn't been scoring it well and then he goes out and had like 10 assists and doing that more often where, like you said, he's more efficient, he's distributing more often. And you're just seeing like, hey, this isn't De'Aaron noticeably different as a player. He's just night in and night out the best version of himself. That's another thing that could happen that would help the Kings get a make that leap to a fringe contender to, hey man, nobody wants to see the Kings in a playoff series.
No.
So that's good news for Sacramento if De'Aaron is in that space. What about Malik Monk?
Okay, so Malik,
speaking of team leaders.
Yeah, Malik is that guy that that media loves and media relations is always leery of because they don't know what he's going to say.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just feel like the anxiety of it. So like most players we got for like 8, 10, 12 minutes, whatever you wanted. Malik Monk was like, okay, we're at the 4-minute mark. It's time to go. Like I appreciate Malik and his rawness. And there are things that Malik says that always, again, we've talked about this. Like he literally walks in and says to me and other media members, like, F off every day. Like,
right.
But jokingly, like he's having a good time with us. You can feel that the money, the financial freedom that he just got for him and his family is something that has changed him. Like that he is embracing that he's made it. Look, Mom, I made it, right? But I think hiding behind all of the sort of bravado from him is this undeniable feeling that he found his NBA home, that he had trouble being embraced in Charlotte. He thought he'd maybe found something in LA, but again, he was a little brother and they didn't have any money to pay him. When he got to Sacramento, I think he found himself as a player. All of a sudden, he found a community that's fully embracing him. He found a game in golf that has really taken up a huge percentage of what he does off the court. Sacramento is one of the best places if you're a golfing player because the season is so long in Sacramento. And I don't think he pays for anything anywhere he goes.
Sure.
And I think he instantly feels like...
Which is crazy. He's got it.
No, he does now.
Let me golf for free.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't got it.
That's right. But I think there's a moment where you look around and you realize that you're being embraced by a community and it's different than having a gigantic bank account. It's that like there's something about being accepted. And I think it's something that really is hiding underneath with him a lot, just how much he appreciates. And it's not a De'Aaron Fox thing. It's just how much he appreciates that he is beloved. And he knows that that's not something you get everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really cool because he's always been so much fun and you just get there's so many layers to him. And that's what I always look for with players is when players are intriguing to me, it's like you want to talk to them more. You want to be around them more because you want to learn more about what's going on in their head. And he's just one of those players that is super, super intriguing.
And that's not a huge surprise given the deal he signed and when he signed it.
Oh yeah.
He didn't even look in free agency. And he had an idea.
Yeah, he had an idea.
But I think that was evident in the deal he took and not going to Charlotte or Detroit or whatever team was going to offer him $100 million.
Yeah, Orlando, whatever it was. Well, that and the fact that he did it like so early in the process, just said, hey, look, no, this is where I'm going.
Right. We're eliminating this question going to put the team in the best position to navigate the offseason.
Yeah. And
where they're not also having to worry about this.
And I'll bring it up too. He's not the only one. Like we saw it last summer with Trey Lyles. Trey Lyles like almost begged to come back. Like Trey Lyles like wanted to come back so bad. Like this is where at the end of the season, this is where I want to be. I want to be back. And you take away some of your leverage, he still got a 2-year, $16 million deal, right? But then again, this summer, Alex Len was a free agent, and Alex Len somehow, this will be his 12th season in the NBA.
Insane.
His 4th season in Sacramento consecutively, but there's also another season where he was here for half a season and then left and then came back. But, Alex talked about it too, that like there's something different about being here and about feeling welcome. So he said, when my agent called and said, this is kind of the list of teams that are interested, where do you want to go? And he's like, well, Sacramento's on the list. I'm going back to Sacramento. And so he feels like this is home. And for all of those out there who like Alex Len has been through so much personally, like because of the war in Ukraine. And the one good thing he did tell us yesterday is that everyone is here now. And so that's a big stress relief. That doesn't mean everyone he knows, and it doesn't mean that tragedy can't happen.
Sure.
But he's been able to get his family here, which is huge. And just watching that and watching someone who is in a locker room, but on their phone doing things, watching things that you just feel for the entire time, that someone shouldn't have to be watching and looking out for during an NBA season. So yeah, I think it speaks to a larger culture that Sacramento is building, and how players like Trey Lyles and Alex Len and Malik Monk, they want to be here because here is home. And this is what they find their NBA home, and they're building something here. And yeah, they want to win basketball games, but also as players, you can win basketball games in a lot of different cities. The key sometimes is that you feel right as a human and feel like you can be more of yourself as a human and be able to put yourself out there in a different way.
Yeah. That's, I think that stuff matters, man.
Yeah.
It's like we talked about with the Karl Anthony Towns trade yesterday. That was something that Karl Anthony Towns had found in Minnesota, I think. And then they blow that up. And I think you're gonna see a massive adverse effect on Minnesota. And I think you would have seen the same thing with Sacramento if they had let, whether it was Alex Len or Malik Monk or whatever, there's a value to that kind of level of continuity. And having this be a place where NBA players are like, yeah, hey, you know what? Sacramento's not that bad.
No, it's
turns out it's a good place to be.
And I'm going to throw this out there too. It's a place where all of a sudden you can be part of one of the biggest Netflix series ever for the NBA. You can be part of it, even though you're a Sacramento King. It's a place where you can release a book and go on a worldwide book tour and become a New York Times bestseller. I'm assuming that's what's happening with DeMar DeRozan's book. And it's also a place where you can get one of the most lucrative shoe deals that there is, and you can go tour China with Steph Curry and get your own shoe. Sacramento is no longer just an outpost. It's a place where you can actually be part of the NBA culture outside of just the game itself.
Yep.
And that's a big deal.
Yep.
It is a big deal.
Yeah, no doubt. Last thing about Media Day, then I want to get to some training camp stuff for the Kings. Did I see that there was a mountain climber?
Yeah.
Was this like a activity, a show?
No, so Mike Brown, like every coach,
vibing?
Yeah, they're always looking for like, what is it that we're going to do? How are we going to build this thing out? Who are we going to be this year, right? And we had the all-in shirts one year. Last year, I think, was connectivity, connected. They had the shirts that said connected.
Sure.
This year, it's climbing together. And so what they want to do is they want to promote this idea that, like we're better as a group than we are as individuals. And if we're going to make this meteoric climb that we want to make, and we want to set our targets on the Western Conference Finals or being a contender, all that stuff, the only way we're going to get there is if we're moving together. And that when if you're a climber, like a mountain climber, you understand that you have a team and that not everybody on the team is what Mike Brown was saying. Is not everybody on your mountain climbing team gets to reach the summit. Some people can't get to the summit because they can't. Their bodies can't. They can't deal with the oxygen deprivation. Some people can. And he's like, so when you're all roped together, we're all pulling on the same string. That's what we're talking about. One guy falls, we all have to catch him. We can't just. So I think it's an interesting thing that Mike is trying to get philosophical with them and say, look, this is how we're going to grow together. If we're going to ascend, like say the Minnesota Timberwolves did last year, it's because all of us move together in one giant swath, not each individual. Now, again, you get to the end, and De'Aaron Fox and DeMar DeRozan and Domantas Sabonis are going to be the ones that get all the praise and the acclaim. But that doesn't mean that we didn't lift them up and get them to that point. And so he brought in one of the world's greatest mountain climbers. I don't know, to talk to the team yesterday.
Yeah.
He's the guy who's climbed all of the, 14 peaks or 13 peaks in the world, the highest peaks in the world. He's climbed all of them, including Annapurna.
Can I, real quick?
Yep.
I am all bought in on this.
Yep.
There's also an opportunity to make, if that's going to be the theme of the year, Stray Kids, the K-pop group I really like, has a song called Mountains.
Oh.
And it's about climbing up the mountain.
Okay.
Anyways, it's a good opportunity to integrate that song into the show, is what I'm saying, and I'm really excited to figure that out.
There it is.
No, but you're talking about this mountain climber who has climbed all of the tallest peaks in the world.
Yep.
Why is this not the most famous person in the universe?
Oh,
do you know how difficult that is?
Yeah.
Like doing that, if I did half of one of those climbs one time, I would be like, I am a god.
You would
hello,
have
everyone.
it tattooed on your chest.
Oh my God. You would never hear. I would open every show. Hey, that's James Ham. I'm Kyle Madsen. I climbed 1/10 of the way up Mount Kilimanjaro. What's really good? We're sponsored by Jiffy Lube.
That's right.
And this dude's gotten to the top of all of them. Never heard of him.
Yeah.
Make this guy famous. What's his name?
I can't even remember.
Perfect.
So that's the craziness of it. Like he talked about Annapurna, right? Which it's not the tallest peak, but it's the most difficult. And he said that Mike Brown said this, that 1 out of 3 climbers die trying to climb Annapurna. And this guy is one of like 11 people who have free climbed or something and climbed without oxygen. Like absolutely incredible. So it was cool to see him like that this is their mantra this year. And each player handles it differently. Some players just kind of like smile, like, yeah, that's Mike's thing. And other players are buying in. And I think at the end of the day, the one thing I will say about Mike Brown over the last couple of years is the buy-in is been as close to 100% as you can get. And I mean, I've been in locker rooms where the buy-in was minimal, where there were guys that clearly separate from the group, where there are factions that separate from the group, where there are factions within the locker room that don't like other factions within the locker room. I've seen all kinds of craziness in Sacramento, but I would say that Mike's personality is to bring people together and to be like the arm over your shoulder, like father figure.
Sure.
But then the dude who doesn't mind yelling and screaming and dropping F-bombs and getting in your business to push you.
Yeah.
And so this is just his new thing. And I'm kind of here for it.
Ed Viesturs.
Yes.
Viesturs is the first American. This is according to the Google AI overview. Salute. The first American to climb all 14 of the world's highest peaks without supplemental oxygen. Those are the 14 peaks over 8,000 meters above sea level.
Whew.
What a guy. What an accomplishment. Ed Viesturs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he came to Sacramento yesterday and was part of their conversations.
Brown said the team's theme of climbing together was inspired by Viesturs. You know what? I got questions for Mike. Was he hiking and went, hey, I wonder if anyone's ever climbed the 14 high. Did he watch a documentary about this guy? I would love to know the inspiration. Next time you talk to Mike,
okay,
I need you to get to the punt. How does DeMar DeRozan fit? We'll figure that out. Who's going to start at the 2? See you opening night. I need to know where he came up with this.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because like I know where he spends most of his summers. I know where he's like in New Mexico, and
as one does.
And there's a lot of hiking there,
sure.
but I don't think that there's a lot of
not a lot of mountains in New Mexico.
A lot of mountains, yeah. So yeah. So I don't know. I got to be honest. Like,
that's what we got to ask. That's what I'm saying.
He's an intriguing dude, and when he kind of goes down one of these tangents, I think he talked about it for 6 minutes to open training camp.
I mean, come on. And nobody said, where'd you get this idea?
Well, no, because he didn't stop. He didn't stop talking, and I don't think anyone wanted to continue on the mountain climbing thing.
I know he's an avid listener of the Insiders. Mike, the Elk Grove Kia talk line is 916-909-1320. I have one question. I promise I won't badger you with basketball stuff. I need to know about Ed. I need to know how you know about Ed. 916-909-1320. That's the Elk Grove Kia talk line. Hope he calls. Kings training camp opens today.
Yeah.
I need to, at the break, I'm going in and getting rundowns because I'm doing this digitally is not helping for me. Oh, I have one more question about Media Day.
Yeah.
Before we get to training camp. What was the vibe this year? Specifically compared to last year?
Okay, so I think that you put this on the rundown early. And like, look, when we talk about vibes,
you know, I'm a big vibes guy.
Yes, you are. And I think that Media Day is a day where, again, just think first day of school, like where everyone's excited. Everyone has like new clothes on, you know, everyone's got a new pair of shoes.
Of course.
Everyone's looking clean and fit. Right. So I think vibes are always good on the first day of school. The third day of school, sometimes they're not so good. So I would say vibes on day one last year. The Kings were coming off their best season in 16 years, and they thought they were going to be world beaters. All they talked about, we heard the word championship like way too many times on Media Day last year. This year, I think that there's a little bit more. I'm comfortable in my own skin. You know, I'm more comfortable in what I'm doing here. Type feel with this team. All of them. Like they know that last year was not who they want to be. They know that they need to bump it up 5-6 wins in order to make sure they're in the playoffs. They know that they are more comfortable being a top 3 team like the year before than they are being a team at the bottom of the Western Conference standings.
You'd hope so.
And they're disappointed in the way last season went, and they're also all very, very excited that the new DeMar DeRozan guy is here, and he's here to help them win.
I think last year is going to be good for them long term.
It can be.
Yeah, after hearing you say, I think it's going to because the rise was so meteoric.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't, oh man, they were 500 and then it was just overnight they became the number 3 seed. It was like, wait, oh my God. And last year, I think getting knocked back to reality a little bit and getting back on more of a normal track of ascension, I think that's going to help them long term.
No, I totally agree.
That's not to say it was like that winning a championship last year would have been great, but I think long over the next 3, 4, 5 years, I think last year is going to benefit them.
Yeah, jumping from 30 wins to 48 wins is nearly impossible, and they did it.
Crazy.
But there's always a little bit of balancing. If they would have jumped to like say 53 to win 23 more games over a 2-year period. Taking that kind of leap, that doesn't happen.
No.
It very, very rarely happens in the NBA. So
that's James Ham. I'm Kyle Madsen. We're the Insiders. We're sponsored by Jiffy Lube. We'll have Kings training camp opens today. We're going to move on from the Media Day stuff. I want to get to the questions that we've got as the Kings enter training camp. What are we looking to answer? That's coming up next on the Insider, sponsored by Jiffy Lube on ESPN 1320 at Sacramento Sports Center. Yeah. Give me 1 second, guys. So thank you. Hang on, I meant to. Where is this? So I need to know, but there's no way. Okay, he was looking around and discovered this climber story. Okay, looking around where? Like, did he Google inspirational stories? Did he? I need to know specifics.
Yeah,
that's all. Ed Viesters. Viesters.
I assumed he wasn't from here.
I'm not at liberty to discuss.
What?
Why Matt Nahagian shut down the 95.7 YouTube chat. I don't know. I'm not there. I literally have no idea. I'm just not going to speculate because I'm there on weekends.
I will tell Mike today that people are now calling him Hike Brown.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I don't know who said that first, but that's so funny.
When someone got that giant Mike Brown face tattoo on their calf, I did send him that. Secure and Bagley, they have media at 12. I'm going to jet out of here a little bit early and run down there. Were you able to get Casey in here?
No, I forgot to text him.
Oh, son of a...
It's fine. I can ramble by myself for 15 minutes. I did a 45-minute podcast by myself the other night.
You know, you could have just asked if I would jump on the podcast with you.
So here's what
I would do the pod with you.
I usually plan. I don't like doing that because I don't like being beholden to a time.
Yeah.
If I can avoid it. And B, I plan to do like 15 minutes.
Oh.
I'm going to get in, and then I get to rambling and it's.
I think that's the one thing I'll like. Big props to Matt George is that a lot of times he's just solo. I've never enjoyed that at all.
It's so tough. It's such a different experience.
No, that's why I've always looked for podcast partners. And that's why it's difficult to do podcasts all the time. Because trying to match schedules with Sean and Brendan is just extremely difficult. There's like little windows where Sean has in the afternoon, but sometimes Brendan is working.
Yeah, Chris and I have a tough time lining up, and that's two of us. Okay, here we go. Hour number 2, that's James Ham. I'm Kyle Madsen. We're hanging out with you till noon. Then we'll hand it off to D'Lo and Casey, and they will take you up to 4 o'clock. Talking Kings training camp, which opens today at noon. James is going to dip out a little bit early to make sure to be down there for the start of camp today. There are two big questions for me going into camp, and I think these are the big questions for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
The first one that I'm interested to see kind of throughout training camp and into the preseason, the Kings open their preseason at Golden One Center on October 9th against the Golden State Warriors. But I'm interested to see how the DeMar DeRozan thing looks. Not less whether it works, just the how. Does it look substantially different to like to the layman, to the person who goes to 8 Kings games a year? Does the offense look different to them, or is it? Yeah, no, it's the same offense. They just have DeMar DeRozan in it now.
Yeah, I'm intrigued too because we've gotten so used to the dribble handoff, right? So so many people are like, "What is a DHO?" And like here in Sacramento, everyone knows what a DHO is, right?
The dribble handoff.
Yeah, the dribble handoff.
Like you're dribbling and then you hand the ball off.
Yeah, it's not that complicated, but that's what it is, right? And I think a lot of people have gotten so used to that. And then last year we saw a reduction in it, right? It changed a little bit. There was more passing off of the handoff, and there wasn't as much handoffs as there was like just motion off the the actual DHO motion. So I think we're all intrigued to see, does it mess up spacing? Is there a way to do this? And I think, DeMar DeRozan said something yesterday that I thought was very, very interesting. He said, we always hear this, that there's, there's only one ball and you got to, like, how are you going to feed all the mouths and all that stuff? He's like, well, last time I checked, the Boston Celtics rolled out like an entire team of all-stars last year and had no problems figuring out how to win a championship. That's what it's about. You just have to go out there and hoop. You just have to play. And all of that other stuff will take care of itself. And so I think they're going in with a good mentality, and he's going in with a good mentality. And the thing is, even with, I think it was Terry Taylor that talked about this, because he played with DeMar last year. He's like, DeMar will have like 3 points in the third quarter and I'll finish with 28. Like, he's like, there's never been a walking bucket like him that many people have played with, where he just does what he does and he doesn't play outside of himself. He just has a very specific game that the Kings are going to have to adapt to a little bit. But at the same time, like, they needed somebody like this that could actually go out there and do something different than just run the offense, and someone who can play within the offense, but also someone that when everything breaks down, you can hand him the ball and say, hey, man, we got 8 seconds on the shot clock and a big moment. I need a bucket now. Can you go get it? And that's who he is.
He did that to the Kings.
In
Sacramento last year.
19 points in the fourth quarter.
End of the first half, 5 points.
Yep.
End of the third quarter, 14 points. By the time the fourth quarter ended, DeMar DeRozan had 33 points, and the Bulls walked out of there with a win. That's kind of, honestly, that's the thing that I think is going to be, to me, the most notable difference is at the end of games. It felt like last year in the final 2 minutes of close games, not that they didn't know what to do, like they forgot how to play basketball, but there was a little uncertainty about, like, hey, is it clear out for De'Aaron time, or is it clear out for Malik time, or is it run the offense time? And I think in the NBA, this can't be your offense all the time, because I think you kind of just get a really middle of the road team if you do this. But sometimes in the NBA, it's like, hey, get it to that bucket getter and clear out. We need a basket.
Yep.
Stop everything. Forget, you go to the corner, you go to that corner, you guys go to the wing, say, DeMar, go to work. And maybe it's De'Aaron or maybe it's Malik. But having that in their bag, where it is a 6'6" bully who has made a career out of getting to 13 to 15 feet and hitting turnaround jumpers or getting to the free throw line, like that, just whether it's to staunch bleeding or to get a much needed bucket late in the game, that's where I think the most notable difference is going to be with DeMar DeRozan. Way more than, oh man, the game in, game out offense looks different. I don't think it's going to be a ton of that.
Yeah, and I'll bring this back to the year that the Kings had Zach Randolph, right? And the Kings were not good the 2017-18 season, right? It's not a good season. The Kings finished 27-55. That wasn't a 27-55 team at all. It was the first year of De'Aaron Fox, but also it's a year where they had 3 first-round draft picks. Bogdanovich comes over, and Frank Mason. The year before, they had 4 rookies because they traded for Buddy Hield. But also they had Scal, they had Malachi Richardson, they had Yorgos Papagiannis. So basically you had 9 players on your in your roster that were first and second year players. It was a disaster. Every time they needed a bucket, they'd throw to Zebo, and he would back down and he would score them like 75% of them. That's what you now have. You have a guy now that, when not only a bucket, when you need to slow the game down, you get it to DeMar and he'll go get to the foul line.
Yes.
I mean, the dude averages almost 8 free throws a game. Like, when you need a bucket,
he'll get the whistle.
Oh yeah, he's going to get the whistle. And it may have carryover.
Sure.
Sabonis might get the whistle.
Yeah.
De'Aaron Fox might get the whistle.
Kings is going to lead the league in free throws this year?
Maybe.
Can you make them?
That's going to be the question. I think the year before last, they were like
question number 2 for me.
5th in the league, right?
Yeah.
In free throw attempts. They got to the line a lot. Last year was a disaster, though.
Yeah.
Not only did they not get to the line, but they didn't hit their free throws when they did.
Yeah.
I just think that he adds a new element that's different, and that's good.
Yeah. Mitch in New Jersey wants to talk about the value of the dribble handoff offense. Mitch, go ahead.
How's it going, James? Kyle, how you doing?
Doing great.
Good.
I think our team is good. Is there another move in the making? I want a little more size. Would you say? I think the Knicks have done a little more than the Kings. And with football, when you started, that's actually the Jets division is pretty weak. Because I think Miami, I didn't realize that Homie is pretty bad. He couldn't even throw 100 yards. And Rodgers is a free agent. He's not going to be there next year. I think that's the worst division in football.
I would agree. Thanks so much for the call, Mitch. Appreciate you. I don't think the Kings are going to make another move. And the Knicks have done substantially more than the Kings.
I think the Kings,
the Knicks had a huge offseason.
I think the Kings need to make sure that they know what they have, that they know how things work. And if they need to go out and get, like we've talked about this a little bit, there's a big difference between needing to go out and get Kyle Kuzma and needing to go out and get Dorian Finney-Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know who the Kings need more at this point. And until it all plays out and we see how it looks.
Say those two names again? Dorian Finney-Smith and who?
Kyle Kuzma. Like, we don't know. We don't know who they really need. And until we figure out who they really need, then, there shouldn't be a rush.
They seem pretty content to let it rock with this group and then figure it out in February.
Well, yeah, and I understand that because at the end of the day, if Kevin Huerter becomes a 24-minute a game 3-point specialist off your bench at the small forward position, this team looks a lot different.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's the way it all works out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if he's not, if he can't play off the bench and like you're trying to figure out lineups the whole time, that's one thing. But like sometimes you just need to let things sit in the pot and see how it all grows together. You got to undercook the onions, right?
Sure.
And see if it all blends together. It's an Office reference.
I hate when people undercook my onions. It's the worst.
Yeah.
I missed the Office reference. I'm sorry. I'm working through that show as we speak.
Oh.
I watched it. So when I first got Netflix, The Office was the reason I got Netflix because I wanted to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
This is 2010. And so I started watching. I think I got through like season 4 and just kind of fell off the wagon.
Okay.
And so I need to get back into the into the swing. I'm working on it.
There's an episode where Kevin brings in his family's chili.
Yes, and he spills it. I've
he
seen
spills
the
it,
memes.
but the key, Kevin will tell you, is the key to a great chili is to undercook the onions so then they cook in with everything else.
Yeah.
And so that's where that reference comes from.
I see.
Yeah. And then he spills it all over the carpet.
Tough. A tough go for our guy Kevin. You mentioned Kevin Huerter. I'm working on a theory. I'm workshopping this. I'm not ready to commit to the take yet.
Okay.
I'm workshopping this take that Kevin Huerter. I'm workshopping it. I'm not committed. That Kevin Huerter should start at the 2 because if that's the way you can maximize what you're getting from Kevin Huerter through the rest of your rotation, through the rest of the game, because he feels good about himself that he's a starter. And maybe it's a short first rotation. Maybe it's 4 minutes to start the game or whatever. But if that's just what is going to get Kevin Huerter to lock in and give you the kind of year that he gave you in 2022-23, then I think you do it. If that is if Kevin Huerter is if he is in such a space that he's like, hey man, I really need a starter. I'm going to mentally spiral again and I'm going to have a tough year. If that's what it's going to be, then I'm all in. Then start him.
Okay, so I'm
workshopping this take.
I'm of the opinion that you build out a starting unit that complements everyone. And yes, Kevin Huerter has skills that can complement a couple of the players, especially on the offensive end. But on the defensive end, the
Problem.
player that complements the team the best is Keon Ellis. And we didn't ask this specifically, but it was out there yesterday that Keon Ellis is going to act as the starting shooting guard through training camp until Kevin Huerter's back, and then whatever happens then. And we'll get into more of that as we get deeper into training camp. But the idea that if you're going to build a starting five and 4 of those guys are elite scorers, I'm going to have one guy who's a defender. I'm going to have one guy who is a 3-point specialist and sits back. And like, look, the guy I would point to for Kevin Huerter, if he does come off the bench, is going to be Kyle Korver. Like, Kyle Korver spent years as like an outstanding 6-man. He had some years where he started, but of the 1,232 games he played as a pro, 423 of those came as a starter. So he had 800 games coming off the bench. And there's a value to that.
Dude, and that's where if you're Mike Brown, and if it was up to me, I would start Keon Ellis. And if Kevin Huerter is not in a space that he can be an effective basketball player within the scope of this team because he's not a starter, then sorry.
Yeah.
Then we'll figure something else out. But I think there's so much value, like you said. Can you get him to buy in and just go, hey man, look, we can start you. You can play a few minutes to start the game, but you're not going to get a ton of looks, and you're going to hang out in the corner, and you're going to get cooked defensively. Or you can come off the bench. You don't have to worry so much about playing on defense, and you can just be a bucket. Like, just go. We're going to put you in a position. You're going to get shots, and you're going to be able to go score.
You and Malik,
with the second unit.
You and Malik are just going to wreak havoc on the league as 2 guys that are scoring from all over the place off the bench. And like, look,
and that to me is where you said it. That's his greatest value to the Kings organization right now.
Yes. Yeah. And I would even say this too. The way that, like, if we go back to the mountain climbing, right, metaphor.
Yes.
Right. If we go back to this, the way that players like Jordan McLaughlin and Alex Len and even Trey Lyles to a certain degree, but Jalen McDaniels, the way that they find their footing as teammates and as players is if a guy like Kevin Huerter becomes something different, if he is coming off the bench, becomes a double-digit scorer off the bench that draws attention, that allows them to play into their more natural position and be defenders and be guys who, again, Jordan McLaughlin, one of the great like deflecting guys in the league per minute. Like, he gets his hands.
He never answers a question. He's just constantly
deflecting. He's a deflector. Primo deflector. Yeah, but like,
he leads the league in pass deflections, getting his hand on the basketball.
He's one of those guys that like, he is like a defensive, a guy who causes problems defensively, right? So my point though is that, like, look, if those guys need to be guys who are averaging 8 to 10 points a game, you might not, that might not be the best thing for them. But if they have 2 guys off the bench that all of the focus is drawn to them, and you're allowed to just settle in and be a great defender and do your thing, it just makes the team better as a whole. Yeah. And it's something that, like, you hope that it works out. But again, if someone isn't comfortable in a position, you gotta figure out either a way to get him into a different position or a way for him not to be there. Yeah. And that's what I'm hoping that the Kings don't have to do, because Kevin Huerter, I think, has a ton of value.
Speaking of which, what's the timeline with him? You were talking about his shoulder earlier. Is he going to play in the preseason?
Well, I mean, he's hoping that maybe he'll get back in time for preseason, but again, he needs to do what the doctors are telling him, not what he wants to do, which would be to get out there and play as quickly as possible. He's got to be smart about it, because this is something that he's had since he was a kid. He tore up his shoulder when he was very young. And so, like, look, he won't be cleared for full contact until mid-October. That means that he'll be able to go through all the walkthroughs. He'll be able to go through all of the basics, all of the getting out on the court and running and shooting and all that stuff. He just won't be able to be in the 5-on-5 like scrimmages that this team is going to have. Yeah. And so that's going to put him a little bit behind the 8 ball. But like, this is a guy who's in his 7th NBA season, 6th NBA season. Yeah. like he knows how to play the game, and he's a guy who is going to walk out there and be able to step on the court. Devin Carter talked about this yesterday. Oh, I'll be fine. Like I'm not missing. I'm gonna be watching and learning, and then I'll be ready whenever I'm healthy and I'm cleared to go. I'll be, maybe I'll need a couple of games in the G League, but I'll be ready to jump on the court. It's like, yeah, that's probably not the way it's gonna work.
Yeah, right.
But when Kevin Huerter, who again has a body of work that you're looking at, 6 seasons of basketball, there is, that knowledge, that understanding, and there's a difference. And so I think that there's a possibility that Kevin Huerter steps on the court pretty quickly early in the season. I don't know if he'll make it back for a preseason game, but certainly the first week or two of the season, I believe he'll be back on the court.
That's James Ham. I'm Kyle Madsen. We're the Insider, sponsored by Jiffy Lube. There any other big questions that you're looking to get answered during training camp in the preseason?
Yeah, I kind of want to know what they're going to do with the 15th roster spot, whether they're going to keep that open or whether they're going to give one of these guys a shot. Again, Scal Lubissiere is in camp. Terry Taylor is in camp. Terry Taylor is, really, really intriguing as a versatile guy, but also shout out to Mason Jones. Maybe Mason Jones is a guy who comes in and plays so well, and I know he's been playing really well during the build up to camp. He looks great. He lost something like 45 pounds from the time he signed with Stockton until the end of the season, and now he's made that who he is. He's become a yoga guy, and he's really working on not only his body but his mental approach. He even talked about not bleaching his hair different colors yet, because he just wants to be known for the guy who's on the court playing hard, and what the focus that he's had this offseason to get an NBA contract.
Sure.
That he kind of wants to stay focused. He might diet at some point, but for right now, that's been sort of his mantra throughout the offseason. Maybe he's so impactful that they've got to move him up to the main roster and open up one of their two-way spots. So I think that there's that last piece is intriguing to me. And I also want to know, does Orlando Robinson have something? Does Jalen McDaniels have something?
Yeah.
Can he bounce back from just a really, really tough bummer of a season where he signed in Toronto for 2 years and then sat on the bench the whole year and got nothing? And how do you deal with that? And especially coming off a really good season in Charlotte, and then he was traded to Philly during that season before to be part of their playoff run. So I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued about all of these other little pieces. But I think the core, we kind of know who they are.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I need Mason Jones if and when the Kings fill their 15th roster spot. That's when I need him to dye his hair, like the smoke when they select a new pope.
Oh,
that's how we'll know that an announcement is coming. As Mason Jones pulls up with green hair or purple hair or whatever.
That would be fun. Hey, look, if he can get right. You look at his G League stats: 15.9 points, 5 rebounds, and
where does he fit?
8 assists. He fits as a 3, off the bench, especially if Huerter is a super athlete who instigates and who wreaks havoc.
Just hustles,
just hustle guy. I mean, that's who you are at this point. I mean, that's again, I listening to Terry Taylor, he understands who he is. I know how, if I'm going to make a team, if I'm going to be part of something, I know how I get there, and how I get there is by being not a scorer, not being one of the. I need to do all of the dirty work.
Yeah,
and if I can do that, then maybe I got a shot.
I don't think they have a guy like that.
Yeah. I mean, Devin Carter is one of those types of players. That's sort of who he is. And I think Keon is a little bit of a dirty work player.
Yeah, no, you're right, Keon. I think I put Keon in a. To me, he should be starting. And I think that to me is a different tier than, that guy might come in for 4 minutes and cause a problem in a game where, hey, they just kind of look sluggish and they need a spark.
Yeah, it's funny because Keon can be Bruce Brown. He can be one of these players. He can be Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I firmly believe that.
I'm so, we're talking about things we're interested in with the Kings this year, and this might be more of a regular season thing than a training camp thing. But Keon flashed so much more as a shooter last year than I thought he would. And what do you have, one game where he had 7 made threes?
At least.
Something like that.
Yeah.
He just, And it felt like, I swear to God, I never saw him miss. It was insane. So I'm interested to see, was that a one-off? Because that happens sometimes. Not Zach Randolph, Julius Randle, we talked about the other day, shot 41% from 3 one year, and then was back to 30% the next year, 34% or whatever. So sometimes that happens. A guy just kind of gets red hot and shoots a great percentage. Or is that just what Keon Ellis is going to be, where, hey, he's a really reliable shooter, and does he become a secondary ball handler? Like, how does his game continue to grow? Because just his playing style and his acumen defensively, just how his IQ, his length, and his ability to be in passing lanes, his ability to get through screens. There are so many things he does effectively defensively that I think he's going to keep him in the league for a long time. Now, if he becomes a really reliable 3-point shooter or a really reliable, like, tertiary scorer, like, now all of a sudden you're talking about a player who becomes super, super valuable.
I get that. Last year he had a game where he went 8 of 15 against OKC.
My lantern.
Yeah, he scored 26 points. He also had plenty of games. He had 11 games where he hit 3 or more threes. Here's the deal. Like, I've talked about this before, but the key to Keon Ellis is that Keon Ellis is being asked to be the same player he was in high school, the same player he was in college, the same player he was in the G League, the same player he was sitting on the bench. He's being asked to do very specific role. Be a crazy defender and hit your 3. Don't do anything else.
Right.
Like, they put him in summer league and said, hey, go ahead and expand your role a little bit. So in case you need to go off the dribble every once in a while, we got you.
Right.
But realistically, if you have a defined role in the NBA, it makes life so much easier.
Facts.
And finding guys that can fit those roles, it's the mistakes that teams make. And I always bring this back to Dante Green for some reason. Like, Dante Green was drafted with the thought that, okay, Dante Green is either going to be like a Carmelo Anthony type scorer, or we'll convert him into a 3-and-D, 6'10", 3-4. Right? Okay, you can't have both worlds.
Yeah, right.
You're either one guy or you're the other. And the guy who gets caught in the middle doesn't survive in the NBA.
Yep.
And that's just the reality of it. So having guys who know exactly who they are, and this even bled into a larger conversation that Mike had about when he was coaching with Greg Popovich in San Antonio Spurs. He's like, just so you know, like, we had a Hall of Famer sitting on our bench, and Manu Ginobili. He's like, Manu Ginobili is literally in the Hall of Fame, and the guy in front of him was Bruce Bowen, who was a better starter for us.
Yeah.
Bruce Bowen's not in the Hall of Fame, but Manu is.
Right.
So Malik Monk, you can go be in the Hall of Fame doing this. You can be special and elite and do the things that you do. But for the team to win, sometimes it's better to have a Bruce Bowen or a Keon Ellis. And man, if you can find a way to get, Keon Ellis to Bruce Bowen status, then that's how I think this team takes that next.
It changes your identity completely. Yeah, and that wasn't to say that Keon Ellis needs to do all that. It's just, I'm intrigued to see, does he continue to be a reliable offensive player, or is it, oh man, he comes crashing back down to earth, and now all of a sudden the Kings have to figure out whether they're playing 4-on-5 offensively with him.
Yeah. If he can be,
that's the question for me.
And for me, like, Bruce Bowen for his career averaged 6.1 points per game on 39.3% shooting from 3.
Yep.
You're not asking for him to score 12.
Yep.
If Keon Ellis can score 8 in a starting lineup, he can easily start for this team for the next 5 years.
Yep. That's it. All right. James, get down to Kings training camp. We'll continue discussing that. Kings basketball, it's here. Basketball is not back until opening night tip-off. So for the Kings, that is, we can say basketball is back on Thursday, October 24th. That's when this show will say basketball is back. But boy, it is very, very close. We got training camp. We'll be talking about that all week and all leading up to the regular season. James, go have a great time at camp. I'll be back. We got some 49er stuff to get to, MLB playoffs beginning. And of course, we'll have the handoff with Kenny Caraway next on The Insider, sponsored by Jiffy Lube on ESPN 1320, Sacramento Sports Leader.
Thanks, Chatty Gang.
Yeah, man. Drive safe.
Yeah, we won't make this a habit.
Yeah, no, it's,
That's it today.
yeah. All right. Oh my God. I really have so much disdain for this commercial. I'm not going to say what it is. It's just my very least favorite commercial.
That's funny. Yeah, I was going to ask you if you, what you did with your Civic, if you did Cars for Kids.
No, we were going to, literally we were going to, but my wife's coworker was in need of a vehicle. So, well, my folks got it to her. But yeah, so yeah. All right, man. We'll see you. Yeah, you too. You can. It's not. I'm not super concerned about it. Okay. Tight. Oh, what's up, gang? I don't know what I'm going to talk about. Actually, I do. That's a lie. I know exactly what I'm going to talk about. I don't like this. I got a company, Baseballism, texting me saying hey, we're excited to be able to share our love of the game with you. Tap the contact card above and save us to your contacts. Absolutely not. We're talking so much K-pop right now. I can't wait to make Mountains by Stray Kids a rejoin on this program. I'm going to do it tomorrow morning. Mountains, mountains. I woke up on the mountains. Ain't nobody stopping me. I'm walking like a titan. It's a great song. Really good fun video, too. Boy, I think Espa's got to be up there. Espa had a good year. Don't sleep on Kiss of Life. Here we go.
Now, back to the Insiders, brought to you by Jiffy Lube on ESPN 1320.
James Ham going to do what James Ham does. He is headed down to Kings Media Day. So I'm hanging out with you until noon. Then we'll hand it off to D-Lo and KC. I'm sorry, not Media Day, Training Camp. Training Camp for the Kings starts today. Their preseason opener is slated for October 9th. That is next Wednesday. They will host the Golden State Warriors at Golden One Center. Then they'll be at Golden State on Friday, and then Portland, then at Utah, and at the Clippers. And then they have a week until the regular season opens at Golden One Center against the Minnesota Timberwolves on October 24th. Cannot wait for Kings basketball. Also want to remind everybody to subscribe to our podcast. It's the James Ham and Kyle Madsen Show. There's a bunch of legal reasons that we couldn't call it the Insiders. So it's the James Ham and Kyle Madsen Show, but it's this show. We upload each hour. We upload the whole show. So if you miss anything, you want to go revisit anything, it is there for you. Please subscribe today wherever you get your podcast. Leave a rating, leave a review as long as you like the show. If you don't like the show, keep your thoughts to yourself, but please subscribe. Joking. We're always open to criticism. Playoff baseball begins today. We'll have some playoff baseball coverage for you tomorrow on ESPN 1320. I want to remind you that we have some Golden Sky VIP passes we are giving away. The country music community is well known for its love of trucks, beer, and football. Whether they shout, "Go Dogs!" or wear the infamous Tennessee orange during football season, everyone has a favorite team. Hell yeah. I'm going to be totally honest. I didn't do this read first. I didn't read through it first, so I'm reading it verbatim. ESPN wants listeners to show off their team spirit for a chance to win VIP tickets to see Thomas Rhett, who is a Georgia Bulldogs fan. Although it just says Bulldogs, that could maybe be Ferris State. Maybe it's not Georgia. And Riley Green, whose favorite team is the Dallas Cowboys at Golden Sky on Saturday, October 19th. ESPN 1320 fans can enter a photo of them repping their team's colors online at ESPN1320.com for a chance to win 2 VIP Saturday passes, 2 park and ride shuttle passes, and 2 exclusive passes to the Golden Sky Beer Festival. Plus, all winners will be qualified for a chance to meet Riley Green. Those colors can be your high school team, your college team, your favorite NFL team. Enter at ESPN1320.com right now. All right, speaking of football. So we learned on Friday that Christian McCaffrey has bilateral Achilles tendonitis. John Lynch mentioned this during his hit on a Bay Area radio station, and it then came to light. I think it just kind of got passed over because there was kind of so much going on going into the weekend. It kind of got passed over until it was brought up by Matt Mayoko from NBC Sports Bay Area on his podcast. And I've reached the point now, and I've kind of been trending this way, but now that, and Kyle Shanahan kind of brushed it aside. He was like, yeah, he had the tendonitis in one side and he overcompensated, so he got it in the other side, but it's mainly in one. It's like, man, you're talking multiple Achilles issues. If the 49ers get anything from Christian McCaffrey this year, it'll just be a bonus for me. That's to me where you have to land. I don't think that they can plan, and if they are, I think they're failing, frankly. I don't think they can look and plan and go, all right, well, hey, Christian McCaffrey will be back by November, so what we'll do is we'll run Jordan Mason into the ground for now. We'll figure out the red zone issues, because that, to me, is their biggest problem offensively right now, is they cannot score in the red zone. They're converting at 50%. 50% of their red zone trips are going for touchdowns. It's not a great number. And if they're going to get that, they're going to have to adjust something and be better at that. If they want it, you can beat the Patriots like that. You can beat the Jets like that. You can hang around against the Rams like that. You're not going to beat good teams in that way. So that's something they have to fix. And if they're going to rely on Christian McCaffrey to fix it, I think they might be hosed, because there's just no way. There's no way you can look at a player who with Christian McCaffrey's skill set and workload. There's no way you can look at a bilateral Achilles tendonitis issue that required him to go on IR for an unknown amount of time, and also required him to go to Germany to receive treatment. There's just no way you can reliably go, oh yeah, we'll have our running back. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we'll just wait. That'll fix all our offensive problems. Like, no, man, they have an issue offensively. They're scoring fine. They're kicking a bunch of field goals. Okay, and it's worked. They're 2-2 right now. The offense looks a little better. Brock Purdy leading the league in passing yards. He's like second in the league in average depth of target. The offense looks different for sure, and it's working okay. But man, if you can't score in the red zone, you are not going to win a championship. And that's the bar for this team. Whether you think they're going to win one or not, that's the bar that they have set for themselves, and the bar they've set with their success over the last few years. So if they're waiting around on Christian McCaffrey to fix all their problems, they're doing it wrong. And maybe they'd be right. Maybe Christian McCaffrey comes back after the bye week. Maybe he's back in week 10. Everything looks normal. He has a normal workload. Jordan Mason's getting sprinkled in here and there. But hey, it's mainly the Christian McCaffrey show, and hey, everything's hunky-dory and everything's fine. I just do not think that you can operate that way. They cannot be banking on Christian McCaffrey to be on the field. And if we talk a lot of fantasy football on the show, tune into Fantasy Fridays with Faraz Siddiqui from Upper Hand Fantasy. Every Friday at 10:30 a.m., we're answering your fantasy football questions. To me, like, man, if you want to trade Christian McCaffrey, I'm not against it. If you want to say, man, if there's somebody who's just dying to get him because they think he's going to be back and they think he's going to help him in the fantasy playoffs, like, all right. But even if and when he does come back, I don't think you're going to see, like, that's the other thing, is when he does come back, there's just no way. if you're managing bilateral Achilles tendonitis in both legs, I don't think there's any way that you can go out there and go, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this guy off IR. Okay, he's good to go. He's gotten his ramp up. Okay, he's healthy. We're going to give him 25 touches a game or 22 touches a game or however many he had last year. 20. Let's call it 20. Yeah, we're going to give him 20 touches a game. You just can't do that, man. That's just not that's not sustainable. If you're trying to manage this injury to make sure he's healthy for the playoffs, then I think you're going to see Jordan Mason has proven himself. Jordan Mason is a starting caliber NFL running back. Like, if you're looking for a player to spell Christian McCaffrey, you've got him right there. You don't have to wonder if he can play in your offense. Can he do all the things Christian McCaffrey does? No. But can he spell Christian McCaffrey and make sure that McCaffrey's touching the ball 12, 14 times a game instead of 20, 25? Yes. So from the fantasy football perspective, just while we're here, that to me, if you want to trade Christian McCaffrey, if you can get some value for him, yeah, send him out. Because even when he does come back, I don't think you're going to see the workload that you saw last year. When he scored touchdowns, like, yeah, he's going to be a red zone weapon for sure. But the sheer volume and the yards and all that, I just don't think it's going to be there. I think they're going to manage that injury. You're going to see him, if he does come back, you're going to see him resting on Wednesdays in practice, and he's going to get into games on Sunday. He might be questionable a couple of times because he had a little flare up or whatever. I just think it's going to be something you're not going to want to deal with. And I don't believe that's something the 49ers can bank on. Figure it out with Jordan Mason. He's a good player. You drafted a freaking running back, and you traded 2 picks to draft a running back in the 4th round. Maybe put that player on the field. I don't know. Try something novel. Try something different. You kept Patrick Taylor the third on your team. Maybe he did some third down work for the Packers. Maybe you throw him in. But I just don't think this Jordan Mason is going to carry it 387 times or whatever number he's on pace for. That's just not going to fly. And it sure seems like they're letting that fly because they're banking on Christian McCaffrey coming back. It looks like they're not doing anything differently in the red zone because they're banking on Christian McCaffrey coming back. I just don't think it's going to work, man. I really don't. Maybe he does. And that would be awesome. They're a better team when they have him on the field. But bilateral Achilles tendonitis, okay, Achilles tendonitis is bad enough, but you got it in 2 legs? Not banking on it. Kyle Madsen riding solo. James Ham is on his way to Kings training camp. I want to remind you, stay tapped into ESPN 1320. James and I are live and local 10 to noon every single day, and then we hand it off to D-Lo and KC, and they rock with you from noon to 4. So James, we will be with James, we'll be doing the very best Kings coverage out there. I'm so excited. Basketball season is back. That's part of the reason I fell in love with Sacramento. If you don't know me, I'm from the Bay Area, and I went to school up here at Sac State. Stingers up. My Stingers way up. Hopefully they join the Pac-12. That'd be sick. But I digress. One of the things I love about this market is how much the city loves the Kings and just loves basketball in general. I learned that I was here in radio during the Here We Stay stuff, right? That was when I first started interning at a different radio station, and watching the fan base and the community back the Kings was just incredible. I've never seen anything like it. And that was what made me fall in love with the city and with Kings fans. And there's just nothing better than being in Sacramento when the Kings are good. And I think they're going to be good this year, and I'm really excited for this basketball season. So shout out to James, who is doing yeoman's work, going from the show, getting down to Golden One Center, and he will be there for training camp, which begins today, and we'll be covering it for you right here on the Insiders and D-Lo and KC. Speaking of the 49ers real quick, and speaking of schedules, because we mentioned the Kings open their preseason schedule October 9th against the Golden State Warriors at Golden One Center, 7:30 p.m. tip for that one. With Monday Night Football last night and the Seahawks losing, the Niners have a massive stretch of schedule coming up. And it was already going to be a big deal because they play Arizona in week 5. And then they get Seattle. They're at Seattle on a Thursday night in week 6. And then they're home against the Cowboys and against Kansas City. Let's split these into 2 games each. You got to get the game against Arizona because you can't fall to 2-3. You have to beat the Cardinals. I have some concerns because I think the Cardinals offense is probably pretty good, although they only scored 14 against the Commanders. But that game got away from them because apparently the Commanders are building an unstoppable juggernaut of an offense and they're going to take over the world. The Niners have to beat Arizona. And then you get into a spot against Seattle where your best case scenario is if you win, you are in sole possession of first place. If you beat Arizona, your worst case scenario going into Seattle is you win and you're tied for first place with the head-to-head tiebreaker. And typically this wouldn't matter. Typically you'd go, yeah, it's early. Like, who cares about the division standings? But the 49ers, with their losses in week 2 and 3, have put themselves in a position where, hey, man, all of these games are going to matter going forward. Their margin for error has shrunk precipitously, especially within the division. You lose that game to the Rams, and now you got division games coming up against Arizona and Seattle. To me, you got to go get those games. Kenny Carroll will be joining me for the handoff here shortly, and I'm really excited that he's here to talk with me about this. And then they get Dallas, who is just apparently not very good this year. And then they're going to get a really beat up version of the Kansas City Chiefs, and a Kansas City Chiefs team that is 4-0. And we went through it yesterday. Jesse and I did. A Chiefs team that is inexplicably 4-0. You can kind of go through each of their games and pick out one or two plays from those games, and you go, man, that could really easily been a loss for them. So this is an opportunity for San Francisco, maybe their best opportunity to, if they're playing well going into that game against Kansas City, assuming Kansas City hasn't figured it out and looks like a juggernaut again, where, hey, maybe you can actually knock off the Chiefs one time. Maybe you can beat Patrick Mahomes one time. And this is where the Niners can make up a couple of games and make up for some of their early season stumbles. I will say the 49ers historically under Kyle Shanahan, they do struggle in October. 13-19 in October. 39-22 from January, from November to January. Kenny Caraway in the building. What's up, Kenny?
I was about to say, what's that? November, December.
Yeah, man.
That's crazy. I wouldn't rely on that all the time, but that's a crazy.
Yeah, crazy
number.
They've been better in September the last couple of years. So they're 14-12, I think, in September. And then 13-19 in October. And then just immediately, like their winning percentage after October goes up every single month.
That's crazy. I'm trying to think the last couple of Octobers that I could think of. Man, so they had the one where they were 3-5 and Jimmy and them went into Chicago and got that win that kind of turned their season around in 20.
No, but then they turned around and immediately lost to Arizona.
They lost to Arizona after that game?
I believe so.
Yeah, that might have. I thought they lost to Arizona before.
We're talking 2021, right?
Yeah, they lost to the Colts on a Sunday night. Maybe that's what put them to 3-5.
Yeah, so they lost at Arizona in Trey Lance's first start to go to 2-3. They had the bye week. Garoppolo has to start against the Colts in the rain.
That was a disaster.
Just a mess of a game.
That's
Drake Kirkpatrick playing.
Done with Jimmy.
Yeah, that was bad. And then they beat the Bears, and Debo had the long screen, and then I think he had a long touchdown as well. It's the deep one, like inside the 5. Yeah,
before the half.
And then they lost to the Cardinals, and that was the one where like Eno Benjamin like railroaded Drake Kirkpatrick. It was like, all right, this game's over. Like, my God. And then they went on. They beat the Rams on Monday Night Football.
That's the one. That's the one that turned them around. Jimmy Ward got 2 picks. Got a pick 6 in that game.
Beat the hell out of the Jags. Beat the Vikings.
But the whole point was that Monday night game was November what?
15.
Yeah.
So October that year they went 0-1, 0-2. They went 1-3 in October that year.
And then the following year,
22.
they actually played well. I would think.
Yeah,
that's when Jimmy and Brock and all this other stuff. But then
2022, they split their 4 games in October. That was they beat Carolina in Carolina.
Yeah.
And then they lose to the Falcons, lose to the Chiefs, and then beat the Rams.
And then they beat everybody until
get the right game.
Ligament in his elbow went crazy.
Yeah. Went crazy.
And then last year wasn't a 3-game losing streak in October, huh?
Yeah. Or end of October into November? Oh no, all in October. Yeah. They won their first 2 on October 1st, October 8th, and then the 15th, 23rd, and 29th. They lost all those.
Damn, October's
crazy.
Bad.
Crazy. Hey, they got to reverse the trend this year. They can't afford to have a bad October.
Don't reverse it too much. So look, hey, go 1-3, go 2-2, or whatever the case may be, and then just go crazy in November and December like you have. Don't reverse it too much. I don't want them to go
just this month.
Okay.
Just October.
But if we're reversing it, that means they're going to go real bad in November.
They got to split. They have to eat. They got 4 games in October.
I think they go 3-1.
You'd be okay with 2-2.
2-2 gets them at 4-4.
4-4 going into the bye.
I mean, I wouldn't be okay with it. Like I'd rather than be 5-3, but 4-4, you keep your head above water. You're still trying to figure out this thing with Christian McCaffrey.
I was just saying before you got in here, for me this year, I don't think they can rely on McCaffrey coming back.
When he went to Germany, I said he's not playing this year.
He might as well stay over
he's
there.
Not playing. That was my thought. Maybe it was a coping mechanism or whatever, but you don't just, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, you don't just go to Germany and then you're back in 3 weeks. You don't go to Germany,
right?
And then you're back in 3. Like, nah.
They're starting the ramp up. And they keep saying November. Like November is the date that kind of keeps, and that actually kind of falls in line with what I've been saying. Like give him through the bye week, and then figure out if he can come back or not. Like they're starting this ramp up, like intensifying the ramp up today or yesterday. What does that mean? Is it testing it? Is it they have a very strict schedule that he's on?
Yeah.
Because at some point I feel like they would be like, yeah, hey, 6 weeks, or the fact that they haven't given any kind of number or any kind of. Even Kyle Shanahan, when guys got hurt in the preseason, like, yeah, half the season. Like he's given some kind. There's just been nothing with McCaffrey.
Well, that was Adam Schefter was with Pat McAfee, and he was basically saying nobody knows, and that's I don't think that's anybody's fault or anything. Like that nobody knows with an Achilles, nobody knows, and especially when it's something like tendonitis, from person to person that lingers. The time varies. You know what I mean? Like it could take some people a month. It could take some people 9 months. You know what I mean? And you just don't know. They're treating it as well as they possibly can. But I don't think anybody knows when Christian McCaffrey's coming back.
I don't think he knows.
I don't think he does either. I don't think he does either. I mean, it's I'm sure it's frustrating, but it's just one of those things. You have no idea how the body's going to react, how much the Achilles and the calf can take, and to be honest with you, Kyle, it feels like it's something you don't find out until you play.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be. Is it at a point that they can effectively manage it? And that's why. And again, I'm sorry for everybody. We just went over this, but that's why the Jordan Mason thing is such a big deal to me. Because now you're in a spot where, man, you have full trust in Jordan Mason now. When Christian McCaffrey comes back, it doesn't have to be, hey, he's going to get every single touch in this game. We need this game, and he's going to get every single. Like, no, man, you got the second leading rusher in the NFL sitting right there.
Yeah.
He can legitimately split snaps where Christian McCaffrey can be used. I mean, you're going to use him in more than just like red zone and third downs.
Right.
But you can go, hey, man, in the third quarter today, you're not going to play between the 20s. Like you just hang out. Mason's got it, and if we get down to the red zone, then we'll pop him in.
They did that. I don't know what happened exactly. I don't know if you caught it, but they did that in week 1, where I think it was a touchdown drive, or maybe it was a long drive with a field goal. But Ayuk and Debo didn't play at all in the series, and I kept looking out there. I was like, Conley, he's still out there, and Juwan Jennings, and like I said, maybe they were hurt, maybe. I don't think it was part of the plan necessarily.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
But they didn't play a whole series. Yeah. You know what I mean? Well, Ayuk, he wasn't hurt. I don't know if he was just tired or they were managing him or whatever. But he didn't play a whole series. So they may pull one of those moves with Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason when they come back. The thing that I'm worried about, and I think you talked about this a couple of weeks ago, is I now need a backup for Jordan Mason. Because if he goes down,
I'm so happy you said this. I have a theory.
Because poor Garendo, I don't know if it's rookie hazing. They just don't block for him. He gets the ball. There's 9 people in the backfield.
He had the 5 carries against the Rams, and you got Chris Forrester, the offensive line coach. Like, yeah, he looked great. Kyle Shanahan going, yep, looked exactly like we expected. We've been really impressed with them. 1 carry. The next, like, hey man, here's my working theory.
That fumble can't happen though.
That was
the way
tough.
It happened.
That was tough.
Can't happen.
Yeah, I think that's why they didn't put him back in. Like, you're gonna think about this, and you'll be back next game. I will say this though. My pet take right now is that, like, they need to get Juwan Jennings on the field more, right? Like he's playing. I don't know that he's their best receiver, but he's playing like their best receiver right now. You have to ride that. Like you have to pause. You have to have him on the field, right? So I think you can kill two birds with one stone. Because you're not going to go. Shanahan already said, nope, not going to do more 3 wide. We don't want to do that. But I think they can, and you put Debo in the backfield. Okay.
I know where you're going.
Where I don't want to say this is not Juwan Jennings makes Debo expendable, but I feel better about giving Debo Samuel some carries and maybe, hey, you're going to take some plays off, knowing that, yeah, you got Juwan Jennings who can fill in fine. So now basically, okay, you're running more 3 receiver stuff, but it's Debo Samuel in the backfield. And maybe he's getting 5, 6, 7 carries in a game. They don't all have to be up the middle, but he's getting 5, 6, 7 carries in a game. Okay, but hey, he's going to go get a rest. He's going to go take a few plays off because, hey, they have a very, very more than adequate fill-in Juwan Jennings.
So I like where you're going. I'm with that. I understand that. I'm with that. But I was going even crazier.
Oh,
I was going even crazier.
Come on.
You get Debo in the backfield more. You got to get Juwan Jennings on the field more. Maybe you put Brandon Ayuk in the slot because out wide is number 17. Yeah, you make that call. Because
Brandon Allen?
You make that call to Las Vegas and say, what you need for this man?
They're going to say, Brandon Ayuk.
I don't know. Do we got something we got to talk about? I mean, we might. I didn't say this is what we're gonna do. I said, okay. You said Brandon Ayuk. Let me think about this. I didn't hang up on you. I didn't say no way. I said, let me think about this. Let me talk to the powers that be. I don't know.
Younger, but
I don't
man,
know.
He's not. Devontae Adams not wearing the wrong color shorts at practice.
Devontae Adams, he got other.
Devontae Adams not.
You
not
can't
showing
really,
up.
Can't really trust on that. Trust that. But I don't know.
I don't hate it.
We gonna talk about on D'Lo and KC, and I'm gonna get off the fence.
Oh,
I'm gonna get off the fence.
Oh,
I'm gonna say, look, this is the deal. You doing this or not?
I love that.
Doing you might have to pop in for a second too, and just answer the question too.
Okay,
oh, yeah, Kings training
I'll be
camp.
around. Yeah, let me know.
Yeah, Kings training camp for sure. It's starting off. The season is here, Kyle. We're back.
It's not. Basketball is not. The Kings can be back. Basketball is not back. The Kings are back though. D'Lo and KC back as well. We'll be back tomorrow. James Ham and I, the Insider, sponsored by Jiffy Lube, will be here at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Stay tapped into D'Lo and KC. They're hanging out with you until 4 o'clock right here on ESPN 1320, Sacramento Sports Leader. The Insider's back tomorrow at 10. Until then, drink water, be nice to people. Boom!